Picture this. You've just installed a shiny new GPU accelerated terminal emulator, or maybe some really obscure terminal emulator that you're excited to show off to all of your friends to show how hipster and not mainstream you are at computing. And it's working great. But then one day, you SSH into your server to, do a little bit of systems administration as you do, and it doesn't work. And man, doesn't work. Your package manager doesn't work. Nothing's working. Why is nothing working? Well, it has to do with the server not knowing about the terminal that you're using. So the problem that we are running into here is that for whatever reason, the terminal emulator that we are using is not sufficiently mainstream or sufficiently old for the server that we're connecting to already know about its capabilities. In order for the server to produce meaningful output for you, the user, it needs to know about the capabilities of the terminal that is displaying the output. There are two systems that are used on Unix-like systems for doing this. There is terminfo and there is termcap. Termcap is the old one, terminfo is the new one. Terminfo is pretty universally used by Linux systems. BSD systems tend to use termcap, or in the case of OpenBSD, as we will see, it actually manages to somehow use both of them, which is great for me for this because I can show you how to do it both ways, because to get OpenBSD working, you have to do it both ways. Let's get this thing fixed up. Oftentimes, the documentation for your terminal emulator will give you witty little one-liners that you can execute and under perfect conditions will magically do the job for you. Unfortunately, if you're using something that's a little bit more obscure than Bash running on a Linux box, those one-liners often will not work properly. And without context for what they're trying to do, you can't fix them to work properly. So we're going to do this the longhand manual way. If the one-liners in the documentation works, then great. Terminfo and termcap are the search terms of the day. If that doesn't work, though, I'll show you how to do it manually. So first, we are going to need to know the name of our terminal so that we can query the information that we need on our computer. So make sure if you get this unknown terminal type blah, 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 make sure you take note of what the blah, blah, blah is. That's going to be needed in just a moment. And this is horribly broken, so let's just get out of here. Terminfo and termcap accomplish the same task, but differently. We'll start with terminfo. So in order to obtain the information, the terminal information file for our terminal, there's a program that we can run on our local computer. Our local computer here knows about this terminal, presumably because you installed the terminal on this computer, and as part of that installation process, the computer got the terminfo record. So we just need to query what that record is so that we can move it over to the server. The way in which you get this information is with infocmp. So if I run infocmp and I type in the name of my terminal, which is xtermkitty in this case, it's going to dump the terminfo data for my terminal emulator onto standard output. So of course I want that to go to a file, so we better redirect that. We'll call this kitty info. Now the information that we have is for terminfo. If you're using a system that runs termcap instead, this is useless to you. We need the termcap file, not the terminfo. Luckily, infocmp will give you the termcap as well. So all you got to do is rerun that same command, but we're going to use tac-c to tell it we want the termcap, and let's send that to kitty cap. And just to show you, like if I run tail on kitty info, that is what our terminfo looks like, and that's what our termcap looks like. So they're different. They encode the same information, but they do it differently. Okay. So now we have our info termcap or both in the case of OpenBSD files. The next step is to get these over onto our server. Easiest way to do that is using the scp command. So if you say scp, I'm going to send kitty info and kitty capability. We'll just send both. And then when you specify the destination, if you give scp a domain name or an IP address, well, I guess I need the username too, doug@douglasrumbaugh.xyz:tilde. This is going to take those files and copy them over to my home directory. So I have now just sent those necessary files onto the server. So now I can SSH onto the server, and we have our two files that we need right here. I'm going to get rid of that termcap because that was from earlier. We're going to make that file. In any case, let's deal with terminfo first because that is easier. We won't need root access for this. You can just do this right here, right now. There is a command called tick, which I can't show you the man page for because we don't have terminfo set up. So the command we want is tick, and just since I'm using kitty and kitty gives me this information in the documentation, I am just going to copy their flags, TACX, TAC-O, refer to the man page for tick for information on what all the different flags are and mean. Then you want to specify .terminfo, which is the standard directory where this is going to get placed, and then kitty info, the name of your terminfo file that you scp'd over. Now, in this case, this is going to give you a little warning about older tick versions. That doesn't seem to affect anything. And now, check that out. We can now use man, we can now use clear, everything is working. Now, it's worth noting that if I do a sudo su here and go into root, everything's broken again because this is local. The way this is set up is local to the user. So if I want for root to have this terminfo data as well, I'm going to have to run the same command as root. So if I go in here, I can just go ahead and rerun that tick TACX TAC-O. Here I'm going to do a ~terminfo, and then again specify kitty info. And now we have that set up for root as well. Okay, so that's terminfo. And if you're running a Linux server, that should be all that you need to do. However, on BSD, you'll notice that I still can't do a package add because it's failing a termcap lookup. So for BSD, you have to set up termcap as well. And I know what you're thinking. If I set up termcap, package add works, but clear and man don't. So as far as I'm aware, it is necessary to do both if you're on OpenBSD. In any case, we now need to set this termcap up. This is a little bit more involved. Now, termcap uses a capabilities database file, which is stored in /user share misc. It is called termcap right here. You'll notice that this file is owned by root and is really locked down. You can read it, and that's about it. What we need to do is we need to take our kittycap file that we SSH'd over, or SCP'd over, append it to the end of this thing, and then rebuild the database. So, as a first things first, when you're working on big system configuration files like this, the first thing you really ought to do, as you can see I've already done, but I'll do it again, is make a copy. You want to make a copy of this file. And we're looking at termcap, not termcap.db. This is the listing of the rules, and then that gets compiled into a binary file that is the actual database that is used. So we want termcap. So I'm going to go ahead and do a sudo cp user share misc termcap to user share misc termcap backup. Make a backup of that file, and then let's just go ahead and copy this into my working directory here so that I can work with it. Now, because I don't have read or write access to it, I'm going to have to give myself write access to it. So I'll use change mode to do that. If you have no idea how Unix permissions work, check out in the cards up above. I'll link a video that I've done previously on the topic. You can watch that and you'll know all about what I'm doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and do a chmod, and we're going to go 664 on termcap, like so. So now, as you can see, we've got read and write for the owner and the owning group, and then still read for everybody else. Since I'm a member of the owning group, I should now have access to write to this file. So now we need to take our kitty.cap file and append it to the end of termcap. The way we're going to do this is by using cat. So I'm going to cat kitty cap, and I'm going to do an append redirect to termcap, like so. And now if we take a look at the last bunch of lines of termcap, you can see we have our capability file added to the end here. This, by the way, is a very large file. 927 kilobytes is quite a bit for text. It's a long file. In any case, now let's put the permission, we've made our append and everything. Let's put the permissions and ownership back to the way that it was. So I'm going to do a, sudo chmod 444 to give everybody read access on termcap. And let's change the group back to bin as well, which is the way that it was. Now I can go ahead and copy this file back to user share misc termcap, and then we will rebuild the capabilities database with cap mkdb, and this is going to require us to specify the location of our capabilities file that we just created. This will take a second to process, after which package add now works. So that is the longhand manner in which you can update your terminfo or terminal capabilities should you need to do so for your terminal emulator. You will have to do this on every server that you SSH into. So it may be worthwhile to set up a script to do this automatically. Most of this you can actually do, well, termcap is a little bit trickier, although you can certainly figure out a way to do this automatically as well. Terminfo is pretty easy to automate. But that should be all you need to know to accomplish either of those tasks, or in the case of OpenBSD, both of them. So I hope that you found this content interesting and useful. Feel free to leave any questions or comments down in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video.